At the heart of Manhattan's glittering skyline stood the opulent Granite Tower, home to billionaire real estate mogul Gregory Slate. Known for his icy demeanor and ruthless business tactics, Slate didn't believe in kindness, only leverage. To him, people were investments or distractions. One rainy Tuesday evening, as thunder rumbled over Central Park, Slate descended from his penthouse to dine at one of his many properties. La Rouse, an upscale French-American restaurant known for its vintage wine list and painfully slow jazz quartet. That night, however, the quartet had canceled due to a family emergency. In their place stood Cassie Monroe, a part-time waitress and struggling Juilliard dropout who occasionally played violin to earn extra tips. She had begged her manager for a chance to perform, and with few options left, he relented. Dressed in a plain black skirt and button-down shirt, Cassie stood alone at the back of the dining hall, cradling her well-worn violin like a lifeline. Gregory Slate was already in a foul mood, irritated by the weather and a failed merger in Chicago. When he saw the replacement was a mere waitress with a dusty violin, he laughed aloud, a cold, grating sound that drew the attention of the entire dining room. "Is this a joke?" he scoffed, raising his wine glass. "Who let the help entertain the guests? What's next?" The dishwasher tap dancing. The restaurant froze. Cassie felt her cheeks burn, but she stood her ground. "Let her play," an older woman muttered from a corner booth. "Let's see if the help can outshine the elite." Slate, ever one for theatrics and humiliation, raised his voice. "Fine, I'll make it interesting. If you can impress me, I'll give you $10,000. If not, you're fired on the spot. Deal?" Gasps echoed through the restaurant. The manager opened his mouth to object, but Cassie lifted her bow and nodded. "Deal?" she said, her voice shaking but clear. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the storm outside seemed to pause. Then she began to play. The notes were fragile at first, like raindrops on glass, then slowly crescendoed into a haunting melody that filled the air with aching beauty. Her bow danced, gliding across the strings with precision and soul. Every person in the restaurant held their breath. Even Slate's mocking smile faltered. Cassie didn't just play music, she told a story. Of heartbreak, struggle, defiance. Of late nights practicing alone in tiny apartments. Of letters from Juilliard she never opened. Of dreams nearly broken but not forgotten. When the final note echoed into silence, the room erupted into applause. A few diners stood to clap. Tears shimmered in the eyes of strangers. And Gregory Slate, for the first time in years, said nothing. He simply stared at Cassie as if seeing a ghost. The applause faded, replaced by a hush thick with curiosity. Slate didn't move. His eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were wide, haunted even. Cassie, chest heaving from the emotional crescendo, lowered her violin slowly. She offered a half curtsy, unsure what to do next. Then, without a word, she turned and walked off the makeshift stage, her heels clicking against the polished floor. The moment she disappeared behind the kitchen doors, murmurs erupted among the diners. Slate remained silent. He stood abruptly, leaving his untouched steak and $1,000 bottle of wine. With long, purposeful strides, he marched into the kitchen, ignoring the stunned staff who parted like waves before him. He found her sitting on a milk crate, the violin resting in her lap. She didn't look up. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked, voice low. "You said I had to impress you, not explain myself," she replied without emotion. Slate's jaw tensed. "What's your name?" "Cassie Monroe. And I already told you." He exhaled through his nose. "Cassie Monroe. From Brooklyn?" She finally looked at him, suspicious. "Queens. Why?" He hesitated. "You remind me of someone. A long time ago, I met a violinist at Carnegie Hall. She played like the world was ending. I never forgot it." Cassie blinked. "You think I'm her?" "No," he muttered. "She died." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then Slate reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He scribbled a number, tore the check, and placed it on the counter. 10,000, as promised. But I want more than one performance. How'd you like to play at a gala this weekend? My private estate in the Hamptons. Full audience. Real stage." Cassie eyed him carefully. "Why me?" He paused, then said, "Because the world needs to hear what I just heard." She glanced at the check. It was real. $10,000 could pay off 3 months' rent, replace her broken laptop, and maybe even fix the crack in her violin. And if I say no? She asked. Slate gave a tight smile. You won't. He left without another word. Cassie stared at the check. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear. Opportunity had knocked, and it sounded suspiciously like revenge. Cassie didn't sleep that night. The check burned in her pocket like a secret. She paced her studio apartment, the cracked walls echoing each step. The idea of playing at a billionaire's private gala should have thrilled her. But something about Gregory Slate's expression, haunted, familiar, gnawed at her. By morning, she'd accepted the offer. 3 days later, a black car arrived to take her to the Hamptons. The ride was silent except for the occasional GPS prompt. Cassie clutched her violin case like a shield. She wore a borrowed evening gown from a friend at La Rouse, one size too tight, with scuffed silver heels she'd found in a thrift bin. The estate was absurd. White columns, marble fountains, and a garden maze like something out of Versailles. Staff buzzed around like bees in tuxedos. Slate's assistant, a polished woman named Mira, met her at the gate and whisked her inside. Mr. Slate will introduce you personally, she said. You're the highlight of the evening. I'm a replacement act, Cassie replied. Mira raised a brow. Mr. Slate doesn't replace anyone. He handpicks. The audience was a glittering blur of diamonds, designer gowns, and champagne flutes. Cassie peeked from behind the curtain and felt nausea rise in her throat. She spotted senators, CEOs, even a Hollywood actress she once saw on a magazine cover in a checkout line. And then, Slate appeared at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice smooth as aged bourbon. Tonight's performance is not just music. It is resilience, memory, and perhaps a ghost come back to remind us of something beautiful. He turned and extended his hand. Cassie Monroe. The spotlight hit her like a slap. She stepped forward, heart pounding, and walked toward the center of the stage. The piano behind her was untouched. No backup. Just her, the violin, and hundreds of eyes. She played. This time, it was different. Bolder. She wasn't begging for attention. She was commanding it. Her fingers moved with defiant grace, each note sharper, hungrier. Her melody twisted into something darker, almost confrontational. In the front row, Slate leaned forward, expression unreadable. At one point, Mira whispered something into his ear. He shook his head. When the final note came, silence held the room for a beat longer than comfort allowed. Then the applause exploded. After the performance, guests swarmed her. Compliments, business cards, offers. She nodded politely but felt distant, like she was underwater. Mira pulled her aside. Mr. Slate would like to see you. In his private study. Cassie hesitated. Now. Myra's expression hardened slightly. Yes, now. Inside the study, lit only by a desk lamp, Slate poured 2 glasses of scotch. You played with anger tonight, he said. Not sorrow. Why? Cassie accepted the glass. Because I realized you don't want to help me. You want to own me. His eyes glittered. Is that what you think? I know people like you, Mr. Slate. You don't offer charity. You make investments. He didn't deny it. Then he walked to a drawer, pulled out a thin envelope, and handed it to her. Inside was a photo, black and white. A young woman with a violin, standing on the stage of Carnegie Hall. She was my sister, Slate said. She died in a car crash the night after this photo was taken. She played like you. She looked like you. Cassie stared at the photo. The woman, she did look like her. Uncannily. Why are you really here? She asked. Slate's silence was answer enough. Cassie left the study feeling as though she'd stepped out of a dream or into a trap. The photo stayed in her mind. That woman, Slate's sister. The resemblance was eerie. Too eerie. Back in the guest suite, she tried to sleep, but every creak in the sprawling estate felt like a whisper. Something about all of this felt rehearsed. Controlled. Slate hadn't just been reminded of someone. He was searching for her, or for something she represented. At dawn, she awoke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten note. Your performance stirred ghosts, Cassie. But ghosts also guard secrets. If you want to know why I really chose you, come to Carnegie Hall tomorrow. 9 p.m. Don't be late. G. She stared at the signature. G, not Slate. Not Gregory. Just a single letter, like a man trying to erase who he really was. Despite everything, Curiosity burned stronger than fear. She packed her things and returned to the city that afternoon, the envelope still in her coat pocket. That evening, she stood outside Carnegie Hall, the red awning glowing like a warning flare in the dusk. A private event was underway. Slate had rented out the hall. Security was expecting her. Inside, the vast hall was dim, save for a spotlight on the center stage. Empty chairs stretched in all directions. The stage was bare, except for one thing. A single violin. Cassie walked slowly toward it. It wasn't hers. This one was old, possibly antique. A small brass plaque on the neck read, "For Isadora. Play like the world is listening." She froze. The name matched the signature on the back of the photo Slate had given her. "Isadora was my sister," came Slate's voice, echoing in the empty hall. He stepped out from the wings, dressed not in his usual tailored suit, but a simple black coat. He looked less like a tycoon, more like a mourner. "She died thinking she wasn't good enough," he said. "The world adored her. But one critic said she played too emotionally, that she didn't follow tradition. That broke her." Cassie looked down at the violin. "And you think I'm her second chance?" she asked. "I think you might be her unfinished note," he replied quietly. "You see, I saw you once. Years ago, you were busking outside a subway station. You played one of Isadora's pieces." Cassie blinked. "I don't remember that." "I do," he said. "It saved me. That night, I was on my way to—" He trailed off. "Never mind. I never forgot your face. Or your sound." Cassie picked up the violin. It was lighter than hers. More delicate. Almost reverent. "You brought me here to what? Redeem your past?" she asked. "No," he said. "I brought you here because you reminded me of something money can't buy back. A mistake I'll never stop paying for." Silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, Cassie raised the bow and played. This time, it was not for money. Not for revenge. Not for ambition. It was for Isadora. It was for herself. And for a brief moment, Gregory Slate wept, not as a billionaire, but as a brother. Cassie left Carnegie Hall that night not as a waitress, nor a performer, but as something undefined. There were no cameras, no clapping crowds. Only the echo of strings still vibrating in her chest, and the image of Slate's face wet with tears. But something else followed her out into the night. Doubt. Back at her apartment, she opened the envelope again. The note. The photo. She stared at Isadora's face, tracing the features. The resemblance was uncanny, yes. But more than that, something about her posture, the shape of her hands on the bow, it felt familiar. Too familiar. Sleep didn't come, so she sat by her tiny window with her violin on her lap, listening to the city breathe. At sunrise, her phone buzzed. A new email. Subject: Performance Inquiry, Slate Industries Gala Tour. Cassie opened it. "Congratulations, Miss Monroe. Per Mr. Slate's directive, we are organizing a 12-city gala tour showcasing modern classical talent. He has requested you as the exclusive featured artist. Travel, accommodations, and a stipend will be covered. Please confirm by end of day. Mira Dane, Executive Assistant to G. Slate." She stared at the screen. Her hands trembled. 12 cities. One tour. Slate had just put her on a rocket ship. But to where? The doorbell rang. Still in her robe, she opened it to find a courier holding a flat box wrapped in gold ribbon. "For you," he said, and left without another word. Inside was a violin case. Brand new. She opened it and gasped. It was Isadora's violin, the one from Carnegie Hall. Inside was a single card. "She would have wanted you to have it." Gee. For a moment, Cassie didn't move. Then something snapped. She called Mira. "What is this?" she demanded. "This tour, this violin, what game is he playing?" Mira sighed. "Mr. Slate doesn't see it as a game. He sees it as restitution." "For who? Me? Isadora? Himself?" There was silence on the other end. "Why do I feel like I'm being groomed for something?" Cassie asked. "You're not," Mira replied softly. "You're being tested." That chilled her more than any lie would have. That night, Cassie agreed to meet Slate at his Midtown office. It was nearly midnight, but the skyline outside still shimmered. He stood at the window with his back to her. "You're angry," he said without turning. "I'm confused," she replied. "And you're not helping. I didn't ask you to trust me. I asked you to play. That's where you're honest." He turned, his eyes hard again, businessman eyes. "I want the world to see what I saw, what I heard. You're more than talented, Cassie. You're a revolution with strings. Then why do I feel like a replica? She shot back. You're not helping me succeed. You're helping me replace someone. His expression flickered. I would never ask you to be anyone but yourself, he said. But if who you are reminds the world of someone it lost, is that a curse? Or a gift? Cassie stepped closer. That depends on how real this offer is. If I find out I'm a PR stunt for your guilt trip, I'm walking. I don't care if it's 12 cities or 12 million. Slate didn't flinch. Then I suggest you keep your bow sharp. She turned to leave, then paused. And one more thing, she said. If I'm going to do this tour, I play my way. Raw. Unscripted. Like the subway. Slate nodded. Then let the world hear you war. Cassie's first stop on the tour was Boston. The concert hall buzzed with anticipation, not for a chart-topping pop star or viral sensation, but for a violinist barely known outside New York. Yet Gregory Slate's influence had turned her into a mystery the elite couldn't resist. Backstage, Mira handed her a crisp program. Photo shoot in 10. Then pre-interview with Boston Classical. You'll open with Ashes in D minor, right? Cassie nodded absently, flipping through the program. Her name in gold script. Below it, in small print, sponsored by the Isadora Foundation for Artistic Innovation. Her stomach turned. Even now, Isadora's ghost clung to her spotlight. The performance was electric. Her bow moved with a feverish edge, sharper and less elegant than tradition demanded, but it moved the crowd to their feet. When she finished, people didn't clap, they shouted. But that night, alone in her hotel, she couldn't sleep. Her phone buzzed. A new email from an unknown sender. Subject, you're not who you think you are. She opened it. Look deeper into Slate. And into yourself. He's not just reliving his sister's legacy. He's rewriting it. Ask him about 1997. Ask him about the scholarship girl. Some ghosts don't stay buried. A friend. Cassie read the message twice. Her hands were cold. She hadn't even touched a violin yet. She closed the laptop and stared out the window at the city lights. Was this really her tour? Or someone else's resurrection? 2 days later, Cassie sat in a black car bound for Philadelphia, her thoughts louder than the engine. The email wouldn't leave her mind. 1997, the scholarship girl. The words spun circles in her brain. She searched online during the drive. Music scholarships, Carnegie Archives, Slate Industries history, but nothing about a scholarship girl surfaced. Until she found it. A scanned article from a forgotten arts magazine. Prodigy violinist injured in mysterious crash, withdraws from Juilliard before debut. No name. Just a blurry photo. Cassie's blood ran cold. It wasn't Isadora. It was someone else. A girl with long dark curls, cradling a violin in her hospital bed. Beneath the photo, a brief line. Sources say the student was expected to win the Isadora Slate Scholarship, funded by Gregory Slate in memory of his sister. The program was shut down the same year. Cassie sat back, stunned. He didn't just lose a sister. He lost a replacement. The car pulled up to the next venue. Crowds already buzzed outside the glass entrance. As she stepped out, a reporter thrust a microphone toward her. Cassie, do you consider yourself the second coming of Isadora Slate? She froze, then said clearly, No, I'm the first Cassie Monroe. The reporter blinked. The cameras rolled. A murmur passed through the crowd. Backstage, she confronted Mira. What happened to the scholarship girl? She asked. Mira didn't even blink. You weren't supposed to find that. So it's true. Mira paused. Then, she survived. But she never played again. Her name was Elise Tran. Cassie's breath caught. Where is she now? She disappeared. Some say Slate paid her off. Others say she fled. Cassie stared at the curtain as the audience settled in. Something inside her cracked. This wasn't a tour anymore. It was a ghost hunt. And she wasn't just playing for herself now. She was playing for every girl who had ever been promised something and then used, erased. As the lights dimmed, Cassie gripped her bow with new resolve. Tonight, she would play the truth. Cassie's performance in Philadelphia was raw, less refined, more rebellion than recital. She poured anger into each note, rage on the G string, betrayal on the E. The audience applauded, but some looked uneasy. Her music wasn't safe anymore. After the show, she avoided the green room and slipped outside through a service door. The alley behind the hall was cold and quiet. She dialed the number she'd found online, an old listing for Elise Tran. To her shock, someone answered. Hello? A woman's voice, cautious, worn. Elise. Cassie's voice trembled. My name's Cassie Monroe. I think we need to talk. It's about Gregory Slate. Silence. Then a sigh. I hoped this day wouldn't come again, the woman said. But if you're calling, it already has. They agreed to meet the next morning at a cafe in Jersey City, neutral ground, far from concert halls and boardrooms. Cassie barely slept. At dawn, she boarded a train across the Hudson, violin case at her feet, fingers tapping anxiously. Elise Tran looked nothing like the newspaper photo. She was older now, early 40s, with sharp eyes and a permanent tension in her shoulders. But when she saw Cassie, her expression softened. You look like her, she said. Isadora. I know, Cassie replied. Everyone keeps telling me. They sat. Elise stirred her tea slowly, like stalling a confession. I won that scholarship in '97, she said. First and last to ever do so. Slate promised me everything, training, press, tours. But when I started surpassing expectations, he changed. In what way? Cassie asked. He didn't want another Isadora. He wanted her. He told me to copy her performances, her style, even her laugh. Cassie's skin crawled. When I pushed back, Elise continued, he became controlling. One night after a fight, I left rehearsal and crashed my car. I never knew if it was sabotage or coincidence. But when I woke up in the hospital, everything was gone. Scholarship revoked. Story buried. I was erased. Cassie sat in stunned silence. Why didn't you come forward? Because no one believes the girl who plays second fiddle to a ghost, Elise said with a bitter smile. But you've got a bigger stage. Cassie stood, her hands shaking. I'm not going to be Isadora. Then don't, Elise said. Be the girl who ends this. Cassie nodded, fire rising in her chest. It was no longer enough to play the part. It was time to expose the script. The next city was Chicago, a prestigious venue, a sold-out crowd. The pressure to perform was immense, but this time, Cassie wasn't thinking about the music. She was thinking about truth. Backstage, she ignored Myra's briefing, scrolling instead through a draft email addressed to every major arts journalist in the country. It contained the full story, Elise's crash, the canceled scholarship, Slate's manipulation, and proof, photos, press clippings, and Elise's handwritten testimony. Cassie's thumb hovered over send. She didn't press it. Not yet. Instead, she walked on stage. The audience hushed. She didn't play Isadora's pieces. She didn't play her own, either. She improvised. A jagged melody filled the room, one that didn't conform or charm. It clawed its way into the audience's chests. It told a story of being molded, silenced, used. Of fighting back. And then, she stopped. Mid-piece. Bow still in the air. I need to say something, she said into the microphone. What you've heard tonight, it's not just music. It's a confession. And a warning. Mira froze in the wings. Gregory Slate, seated in the front row, leaned forward slowly, his face unreadable. For years, this industry has hidden behind elegance and legacy, Cassie continued. But sometimes, what you hear between the notes is more important than the melody. She turned toward Slate. I was supposed to be a tribute, a revival, maybe even a replacement. But I won't be someone else's shadow, and I won't let the truth stay buried any longer. She walked off stage to stunned silence. Backstage, Mira rushed toward her. You have no idea what you've just done. Cassie pressed send on her phone. I know exactly what I've done. By midnight, the story was live. Headline after headline. Cassie Monroe exposes Billionaire's orchestrated legacy, Isadora's shadow, the hidden victims of Slate's ambition. Cassie turned off her phone and closed her eyes. Let the world play its part now.